Hi everyone, this video is called Proof Against Atheism.
Hi everyone, this is a proof against atheism.
It's cool, man. I already told them.
For this video, I'm going to define atheism as not believing in anything supernatural.
Oh, a dumb definition. What does it say at the bottom there? If you disagree with this definition, just replace the term atheist throughout this video with not believing in the supernatural, then you can be an atheist who believes in the supernatural. Well, in that case, why did you call the video Proof Against Atheism? Why are you defining atheism as basically naturalism? If anything, what you're actually arguing against is philosophical naturalism, which is a totally separate position from atheism, and using atheism in this way just muddies the waters for no reason. Other than maybe getting clicks, which I suppose you've succeeded in doing, considering that I'm responding to this. So I guess I can't argue against your results, but I can argue against your methods.
So only believing in the physical world.
Is it? I guess it could be. Whether you consider naturalism as totally equivalent to physicalism would depend on how you define natural and supernatural. I would say physicalism is a much narrower thing. Already I feel like we're getting really confused in our terms here.
Try giving this a chance. I think it'll be worth it.
Well, I'll give it a chance, and I'll give you all your definitions. I don't have a problem doing that. I don't really understand why we're mixing all these terms together, but if that's what you want to do, okay. As long as it gets us there, it's fine.
To be specific, I'm going to prove that the average atheist has unknowingly two contradicting beliefs. Belief one is something that everyone can agree on, that you have a stream of consciousness, as in you will experience future events.
Yet another interesting definition. I would have thought stream of consciousness refers to the perception by a consciousness of having some sort of continuity. It's not the belief that in the future I'll still have that continuity. It's the feeling that in the present and in the past I have had that continuity. And it's the label that would be given to that feeling of continuity in the future as well, assuming that it in fact does continue into the future. But that doesn't mean it will. The future is not necessary in the definition of the term stream of consciousness. It's not essential to the concept. In the future, I could be dead. I could be dead by the time I finish this sentence. There could be no stream of consciousness in the future from now. And yet stream of consciousness as a descriptor still applies to what's happening now, and to what's happened in the past, and to what I hope will continue to happen in the future.
Pretty non-controversial.
Is it? On the screen there you wrote, you have a continuous stream of consciousness, you will experience your body tomorrow. The first part is about the present. You have a continuous stream of consciousness. The second part is about the future. You will experience your body tomorrow. These are two different things, and I think the first one's a lot more useful. Now, I understand what you're trying to say. If I believe I have a stream of consciousness, then I believe that assuming that I'm alive in the morning, I'll still feel like I'm me, and I'll still feel like there's some continuity with the past me, which no, I don't find objectionable or particularly controversial. I just find it awkwardly presented.
Belief two is atheism.
Belief 2, nothing supernatural exists, only the physical exists. Again, that's not atheism by anyone's definition but your weird one. But again, I'm letting you have it, it's fine. But I do have to reiterate for the benefit of the audience that this is not actually atheism. It's important to make sure that these weird alternate definitions that people use in videos sometimes don't seep into the language. All that's going to do is make it hard for people to talk to each other.
Belief two is atheism, or some people call it materialism.
Nobody calls atheism materialism. But yes, some people call what you call atheism materialism.
The belief that nothing supernatural exists, only the physical world.
Which are two entirely different positions. Related in some ways, but different.
I'm going to prove that these two beliefs contradict each other. And as long as we still agree with belief one, we have effectively proven that atheism is wrong and the supernatural exists.
What is that noise? Could be a plane, could be a helicopter, could be a motorbike or a truck or a especially deep-sounding car. Could be an oscillating fan. To me, the last one sounds pretty plausible. It sounds very choppy. Let's listen again. You know what I mean by choppy? Fan blades against the air? Not those weird Dyson fans weird people use. I mean normal fans, normal people use. Let's hear one more time. I used to live downtown right next to a busy street, and typically the noisy vehicles didn't sound as consistent as that. This sounds very flat. It doesn't really change much over time, at least in the short amount of time I have to listen to. I just don't see it being a vehicle, at least not a road vehicle. But then again, there's this one part from earlier where it kind of sounds like a car revving its engine.
Contradict each other.
So that kind of makes it difficult to figure out what this is conclusively. Video creator guy, whatever your name is, please clarify in the comments. This is very important. I don't think I'll be able to get to the bottom of this one myself. So I guess that's the video. Thank you for watching, and wait a second. Wasn't there something else to talk about? Hey, video guy, what are we talking about? Summarize it quickly for me. Right, sorry, yeah. I'm still more interested in the sound. I still got to cover that part. That does seem like an important secondary topic. But still, please, clarify about the sound. Thank you.
First, I will give 2 implications of atheism/materialism to help us understand it.
Even you're tripping over this now. If you want to say materialism, just say materialism. If you want to say atheism, just say atheism. You cause so much confusion by trying to relabel atheism as materialism that you end up having to say things like atheism/materialism.
Next, I will ask 2 questions to help establish that you do indeed believe you have a stream of consciousness.
You don't really need to. I do believe that the stream of consciousness is a real psychological phenomenon. I don't really need that demonstrated to me. As you said yourself, it's not really that controversial.
And that you do believe you will experience a future body.
Yeah, that's another thing you don't really have to demonstrate to me. I believe that my stream of consciousness will persist for another 1 second. And in fact, I believe it probably will for 1 day and 1 week and 1 month, and I really hope 1 year. I can just grant you this phenomenon. I'll grant you most well-known psychological phenomena. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean I'll grant your exact characterization of them or your explanations for them. It remains to be seen whether I agree with you on those. And considering that you're pitting them against materialism, or physicalism, or naturalism, or atheism, or whatever we're calling it, I strongly suspect that I disagree with a lot of what you think about this phenomenon. But who knows, by the end of the video that could be resolved.
Lastly, I will ask question 3, which is the proof that will prove that these 2 beliefs contradict each other.
You spelt consciousness and materialism wrong. I'm not saying that says anything about your video, or your argument. You spelt them correctly earlier in the same slide, and misspellings don't say anything about the argument. I'm just saying maybe you should have been a bit more careful.
That a stream of consciousness denies atheism/materialism.
Yeah, okay, let's get going.
At the end of question 3, you will be forced to admit that atheism is wrong.
Perhaps we should be a little bit more modest about this. At the end of question 3, you'll be forced to admit that you're wrong. Really? What if I have an opinion on it that's different from your own? What if I have a rebuttal to it? What if I have additional information about it? What if there are responses to it that you haven't yet considered? You wouldn't know if there are because you haven't considered them. So to be a little more humble, you would say something like, this seems to me to imply that atheism is incompatible with what I consider to be the majority position of atheists on the topic of consciousness. Doesn't that sound a little bit less like setting yourself up to be a lol cow?
So what are these 2 aspects/implications of atheism/materialism?
I don't know, man. Wish I could tell you.
To help explain things, imagine these blocks are molecules or particles in the universe.
Damn, those are some nice molecules. You even got some blue ones in there. Those are the most expensive ones.
The first aspect is that it does not matter if I swap the position of 2 molecules in the world, given that they have identical properties.
Assuming that they're identical molecules and somehow you do it instantly and preserve every aspect of it. Position, rotation, motion, all the other weird finicky physicsy stuff. Then sure, I agree. This would be indistinguishable, at least at the level of the object constructed from these molecules, from not having replaced anything at all. And so on that level, the change would be indetectable. There may or may not be some deeper, fundamental physical effect of changing the positions of 2 molecules, I don't know. In any case though, if you do it like your animation shows and you just pluck out one molecule and then jam another one in its spot, that could easily have physical effects. So your animation is misleading. You put all this effort into animating this, but in fact it would have been better if you just had a before and after picture that were identical, and you just instantly switched from one to the other. Less effort would have made your video better.
Assuming that they have identical properties, swapping these 2 molecules should have no effect on the universe.
No effect on the universe? I'm not sure. That's a question for deeper science and philosophy than I have any intention of even pretending to have an opinion on. What I meant to agree to was that for all intents and purposes, in relation to the organism or the structure that we're talking about, there will be no difference. If you instantly swap out one molecule for another identical molecule in your body should still function exactly the same. I agree with that, but I don't agree with your application of this principle to the universe in general. Or disagree with it, I just don't know.
Let me say this again. If the before and after picture are physically the exact same, and we only believe in the physical world existing, then by definition, swapping these molecules had no impact on the world.
Yeah, but the assumption that you're making there is that the nature of the physical world is defined solely by the molecules within it, or the particles within it. It implies some knowledge on your part that the switching of the positions of two identical molecules in a way that would make the before and after states appear identical to humans, in fact has no deeper implication on the universe itself. That this doesn't change things in some way that we can't access. And I don't think you have any justification for this. I don't think you have any knowledge about this, because I don't think anybody does. If you want to say the world before and after would seem identical in the functioning of the system, fine, but I'm not going to agree that this must be identical in all ways beyond that. That would be extremely presumptuous. Now, with all that having been said, I don't think that this has much impact on your argument. I don't think most things I've said up to this point have much impact on your argument. I think a lot of it is just clarification, but nonetheless, I think it has to be said.
Aspect 2. Temporarily deconstructing anything into its molecular components, then reassembling it back together, does not directly have any long-term impacts on the object/being.
Any long-term impacts on the object/being. Okay, I like that. Let's talk about that from now on. Not the world, not the universe, the object or the being. That's good. But you're wrong that disassembling and reassembling an object from the same parts must have no impact on it. I've been very, very generous so far, assuming a lot of stuff to help you out, and pointing out things that make this better for you. Like that what you actually mean is that you're reassembling things in a totally identical way to some previous state, with all the motion and other physical interactions intact, in a way that would be indistinguishable from just stopping all the physics within the object and then resuming them perfectly later with no disruption. But you don't actually say that. That's me trying to steelman your argument, despite what you actually say and what you show on the screen. Because what you actually say and show is that we're just busting the thing up into individual components and then putting it back together, which if you do that to a living system means death. You're not preserving the process the matter is undergoing, you're just preserving the matter. So if you do that to a human being and then put the puzzle back together, the processes won't be running anymore, and what you'll have is a dead person. I'm not steelmanning your argument out of kindness here. I'm doing it because it's necessary to get us to your actual argument, because otherwise the whole thing just fails right here.
If the object is physically the exact same, with or without deconstruction/reconstruction, then there is no impact.
If the object physically is and is doing the exact same thing, yes. What you described will not make it the exact same. But if you could somehow, by some almost certainly physically impossible feat, make it the exact same, then correct, no impact. Essentially just by definition. If it's identical on every conceivable level, well, A is A.
So now that we've established atheism/materialism...
Another thing I should point out is that believing that everything in reality is physical, or natural, or material, or, I really wish you'd settle on one term. But whichever one you pick, that doesn't necessarily include the belief that you can just swap out a particle with an identical particle and everything will function the same. Again, because naturalism or physicalism don't necessarily include the assumption that particles are the be-all and end-all of reality and nothing else can affect the functioning of a system. This interpretation is not implicit to the position that everything that exists is natural or physical.
Let's establish that you have a stream of consciousness, and you will indeed experience a future body.
Already an exceedingly complicated question. I'll be talking about this more later, and I don't think you'll like a single thing I have to say about it. But for the time being, yes, there is a psychological phenomenon of a stream of consciousness. Assuming I'm alive in a year, most likely, unless something tragic has happened, it will seem to me that there's been a continuous stream of consciousness leading up to that point. Except, of course, for sleep, or if I drink too much, or if I get hit too hard on the head, or, But I'll feel like I am continuous with the me from a year before, thanks to things like memory. How objectively true that is and what that means, we'll leave for the philosophers and neuroscientists and psychologists to argue with each other about, just like with any other phenomenon in the brain. Or in the case of the philosophers, really any other phenomenon at all. If you think about any concept carefully enough, every human concept is kind of fuzzy. But at the bare minimum, it'll be a convincing illusion and a strong feeling.
Question 1. Here on Earth, if I reveal to you that as we speak, there coincidentally exists a person with your exact molecular structure on an alien planet, whose body are you currently experiencing?
Earth body.
Who would you rather not get shot tomorrow? Whose bed will you wake up in tomorrow?
In answer to the first question, Earth body. In answer to the second question, who knows? Depends how wild the night gets.
Think about it for a second.
Okay. Is that a second?
Correct.
Oh, good. My inner clock is functioning.
You will be looking out of your own earthly body tomorrow.
Me? Like me right now? Or me who's the continuation of the system at some future point in some other state? I'm getting ahead of myself. I know what's coming, so I'm not just being needlessly nitpicky.
Pretty easy.
As a matter of regular human speech, colloquial language, even qualia, subjective experience, sure. As a matter of fundamental fact, though, or as a matter of philosophy, well, I wish I could agree with you.
Tomorrow when you wake up, you're going to be looking at your own bed.
Says you. You don't know my life.
What goes on in alien planets
Stays in alien planets.
does not affect you.
Guess it depends what they're getting up to. Don't, tear open the fabric of reality or anything, guys, okay? Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
You would probably prefer that this random clone dies over yourself.
Yeah, I don't like clones. I've had bad experiences with them in the past, as many people know.
Question 2. Pretty much the same question. Today, here on Earth, if I told you that tomorrow, on some alien planet, a scientist will coincidentally build another person with your exact molecular structure, who would you rather not get shot tomorrow?
Didn't you already ask that?
Whose bed will you wake up in next week?
Next week? Man, you're asking me to plan real far ahead right now.
And remember, we're asking current you. This is before the clone is made, so there's only one person to ask. Earth you.
It doesn't really matter if it's before or after. You're still asking the Earth me.
The answer should be, you wake up in your own Earth bed. You would prefer that this random clone gets shot over yourself in the future.
Well, the answer in my case is that. I don't really understand why you're saying it should be that. It sounds like you're putting some kind of normative value on it. I don't think that's really the topic.
What goes on in alien planets does not affect you.
You keep saying that like you really want to convince me of it. What's your game, dude?
If this isn't your answer, allow me to expand on question 2.
Expand away.
If I told you that tomorrow you will get to eat the best food ever and you're going to get $1 billion, just take a second to picture yourself eating your favorite food tomorrow, just imagine savoring that taste.
Can you just get to the point?
You would be pretty excited.
Says you. You don't know my life.
Now, would you be equally excited if I instead told you that someone on an alien planet far, far away with your exact molecular structure was going to be built tomorrow and get these luxuries instead?
No. This is the exact same question as who would you want to get shot. Just instead of a bad thing, it's a good thing. I don't see how this is adding to the point.
No, you're not going to be as excited because you're not going to be the one experiencing it. Unless you on Earth equally anticipate getting to eat that food in both scenarios, you admit that your consciousness is in a specific body.
Well, my consciousness is an activity of the system of my brain. If there's another brain somewhere that happens to resemble my brain, that's a different system. Similarly, if somebody builds a computer exactly the same as my computer, including having all the same data, hell, even starting in the middle of all the same processes, it's still a different system.
You acknowledge that there's a specific body you will experience in the future.
In the qualia sense, yes. In the colloquial English sense, yes. In the more philosophical sense, there will be a future version of this system, very differently configured and with very different feelings, thoughts, opinions probably, memories, experiences, and physical structure and makeup, which will have a subjective experience of having continuity with my system as it is now. And you start to see why I told you you're not going to like anything I say about this. Religion tends to offer really simple, easy-to-swallow answers to questions, because the cool fun stuff is also kind of weird and not usually in line with how people think of themselves initially. All easily defined and self-contained and continuous and all this stuff.
Alright.
Okay.
Now that we've established that you do indeed have a stream of consciousness and will experience a future body,
define me. I will pick at your definition severely.
And we've also laid out the two aspects of atheism/materialism, now we can do question 3. This is the important one. This one will prove atheism can't be true. It will prove that these two past ideas contradict.
Settle down.
Question 3. Okay, imagine we were to do an experiment tomorrow. This will be you. One by one, I replace all of your molecules with new ones of the same properties. And then I put all of your old molecules back together, creating a second body. Which body would you prefer I not shoot? Which one are you looking out of? Whose bed do you wake up in tomorrow?
You keep saying molecules, but at the bottom of the screen you say, remember, anything can be swapped, electrons, photons. So we can just use whatever word, molecules, particles. We're just talking about creating an exactly identical duplicate of the system. And in this case, we're replacing all the particles one by one. So you're maintaining one functional system while removing parts from it, and then constructing a second new system, which is irrelevant. Because of course consciousness is not some property of matter that can be transported along with it. Consciousness is something that happens, and it's happening in the system that's being slowly replaced. Many years ago, I had a very long and involved conversation with someone about this. This was shortly after starting my channel, and I meant at that point to make a video about it, but I never got around to it. And what we were talking about was the prospect of, in the future, potentially being able to upload your consciousness into a computer. Not on the level of, is this technologically feasible, but on the level of, if it were, would you want to do it? And we were pretty well agreed on the idea that if you just duplicate your brain, be it to a computer or in any other way, then all you've done is make a copy. Whether it experiences something has no impact on you, as such. That's a different system. It's a clear example of a separate consciousness. The new copy of you would, of course, feel like there was continuity of experience with you. It would have all of your memories. It would kind of just feel like it teleported across the room. But you, of course, wouldn't feel like there was any continuity there at all, because you would still be sitting there where you were before. Or if you died in the process, you would just be dead. And this goes to what you were saying about the creation of another you exactly the same on some alien planet, and then you, the original you, getting shot. But what I came up with in response to that was, okay, what if instead artificial neurons were created that functioned exactly the same as your current ones, and your current neurons were gradually replaced one by one with these functionally identical synthetic neurons, until eventually you had a computerized brain, and yet there was no break in continuity between the original you and the duplicate you, because there is no duplicate you. It's just one continuous you where some of the parts are being swapped out over time, until all the parts are swapped out. So basically the ship of Theseus. Is it still the same ship if it's been repaired so much that every piece of it has been replaced? Not all at once, but one piece at a time, over many, many years. And this has been debated for thousands of years. Plutarch wrote about this in his Parallel Lives in the 1st or the early 2nd century. But he was writing based on sources from significantly earlier, like up to 500 years earlier. So this question is not new. The only thing that's new is it being applied to different things. And this is basically what you're showing with your replacing all the molecules in a person one by one and taking all the original molecules and building a second person out of them. The other part of the ship of Theseus analogy is that the original parts of the ship were used to build another ship. That was tacked on by Thomas Hobbes, and it's a good addition, because it makes the question more interesting. So there's one ship that's continuous with the original ship, but has none of the original parts, and there's another ship that's not continuous with the old ship, but has all of the original parts. Now, as this analogy applies to a physical understanding of consciousness, the answer is fairly definitive. The original ship would be Theseus's ship. It's the system that's been operating this entire time. Casting off parts, yes. Having parts replaced, yes. But with a clear progression from one state to the next. In the same general way, with a usual, colloquial understanding of identity questions, you're the same person that you were when you were a baby, even though, physically speaking, you have almost nothing in common. If you were to just compare you now with you as a baby, well, you'd have a real tough time, but you can see the progression from one state to the next. And this is the same with a person having their entire brain slowly, one part at a time, be replaced by computerized parts.
You were able to choose a body in previous questions. Choose one here.
Red.
And remember, the experiment hasn't happened yet.
Irrelevant to your argument, but in the real world, yes, it has. It's been happening since before I was born. It will continue to happen every day until I die. Okay, not the part about creating the green guy, but the part about continuously having my parts replaced. That's not some thought experiment. That's literally what happens in your life. Now, it's easily possible that someone will comment here that neurons aren't replaced over time, and that's true. You have the same neurons for your whole life, and if they die, that's a problem. But we're talking about the atomic level here, and you have to remember, neurons are still living, metabolically active cells, which means that within them there's a lot of turnover of material. Apparently not in the DNA, but a cell is not just DNA. And also at the atomic level, a brain is a lot more than just neurons. And even at the cellular level, if we expand from just thinking about replacement of cells to thinking about change within cells, or change in the configuration of cells relative to each other, my brain is radically different from when I was small. So the point easily stands. I am the ship of Theseus, and I am dramatically different than I was as a fetus, which is why I don't have the consciousness of a fetus, or a baby, or a 5-year-old, or a teenager, or a 25-year-old. The consciousness they experienced is over. Baby me doesn't exist. The original ship of Theseus doesn't exist. And yet Theseus still has a ship, and I still have a self.
So there's only one person to ask at the moment.
You said that before. I don't know how that's relevant to the question.
Now here's the great thing. Any answer to this question accepts that you disagree with atheism and you acknowledge the supernatural exists.
No. Also, holy shit, it's still confusing to have to reinterpret the word atheism every time you say it.
There are 0 logically coherent answers that will allow you to believe materialism and believe you have a stream of consciousness.
Yes, there are. I've just got done explaining this to you. What misconceptions must you be operating under to think this is impossible? I don't think you mean there are 0 logically coherent answers. I think you mean there are 0 answers you find satisfying to your idea of, personal identity, and I don't care.
If you say you're looking at the new matter body, then you disagree with aspect number 2 of materialism. This is because you believe that your consciousness is no longer in your old matter.
Consciousness in matter. Why would I believe my consciousness was in matter? Consciousness doesn't, imbue molecules with little bits of consciousness. Are you now dragging some sort of weird form of panpsychism into this? Like the origin of consciousness comes from the consciousness of tiny particles? Is that what's happening here? It seems to be the basic assumption underlying your objection. At least I can't think of anything else that would. And then on the screen there you say that you disagree with aspect number 2 of materialism, the idea that deconstruction and reconstruction should have no impact. There was no impact. The red body's functioning exactly the same as it was. No impact.
If we redo the scenario, but the new matter didn't exist, and your body was instead swapped out with air, then you simply believe the act of deconstructing and reconstructing the old matter caused you to permanently die.
No. What killed me was having all the molecules in my body slowly replaced one by one with random molecules of random gases from air. You're completely destroying the system in which my consciousness is operating. It's like if you opened up my computer while it was running and started replacing every wire with Play-Doh. What do you think is going to happen?
You disagree with materialism.
No, neither materialism, nor physicalism, nor naturalism, nor atheism is the position that your consciousness is imbued into matter, and therefore is transported along with the matter that constitutes it, no matter the circumstances. No, for me to disagree with atheism, I would have to believe that when you reconstituted the new matter into another person, which functioned exactly the same, that person is not conscious. But that person is conscious. You're building a second conscious person out of the matter that formerly composed me. And assuming you build this person to be identical to how I am at some point in time, this person will be identical to how I was at that point in time, including having all my memories, having consciousness, having a sense of the continuousness of this consciousness all the way back to when he was a child. In essence, this other me, reconstructed from my cast-off parts, will be identical. There will have been no impact from this reconstruction. So how do I disagree with the idea that deconstruction and reconstruction should have no impact? How do I disagree with materialism? How does any of that mean what you're pretending it means? If I said, no, that can't happen. You can't rebuild a second me that actually thinks it's me and is conscious. That takes some ineffable essence beyond the physical. Maybe then you could say, it seems like you might kind of disagree with materialism. How did you miss this point? Did you even listen to this argument before you made it?
If you say that you're looking at the old matter body, then you disagree with aspect number 1 of materialism. This is because you believe that your consciousness is not in the new matter.
Consciousness is not in matter. I'm not a panpsychist. You're not arguing against panpsychism. Did you make the wrong video by accident?
If we redo the scenario, but we never reconstruct the old matter, then you believe simply the act of swapping out your molecules with identical ones caused you to permanently die.
Yeah, this weird you are your matter stuff, your mind is literally imbued into the matter itself stuff, is not my position. I agree, it's silly.
You disagree with materialism. You believe the supernatural exists.
No, I don't think panpsychism is necessarily a supernaturalist position. It can be, I just don't think it has to be. I agree it's definitely got shades of religious supernatural thinking to it, but that doesn't mean it has to be believed to be supernatural. In any case, though, obviously not going to defend it.
I call this the molecular doppelganger dilemma, Regardless of your answer, you disagree with atheism. That's because all of the answers disagree with atheism.
Okay, then why is option A totally consistent with it and option B is just a version of panpsychism?
This is not a matter of I don't know.
Yeah, I noticed.
It's a matter of there is no possible outcomes that agree with atheism.
Of course, both of them agree just fine with atheism. As far as materialism, you could have consciousness in tiny particles and have that be naturalistic somehow. Why not? It's not logically impossible. It's just kind of dumb.
This is because atheism and consciousness never went together well in the first place.
Never went together well as in didn't give you easy answers that you liked?
You must accept that the supernatural exists. Atheism is wrong.
Fucking lol. Do you see why I kept advising you to settle down and be a little bit more humble? Now you're just a lol cow because you were prideful. Silly, silly lol cow.
Religion hasn't answered question 3.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how to answer this real good. Therefore, soul.
My belief is that your consciousness is in your soul, and that your consciousness is in the new matter because that's where your soul is. Regardless of how likely you think my answer is, at least it is logically coherent.
Yeah, seems like it. I'm sure that would have been important for some reason if your argument worked at all, but now we're just kind of killing time, I guess.
There is no logically coherent answer under atheism.
This video sucks.
Impossible will always be better than impossible.
So if I falsify your hypothesis, that's a license for me to just jam whatever the hell I want in there and believe that. Long as it's possible. What a farce.
When you accept that there must be more than the physical world, suddenly religion should look a lot more appealing.
Why? If there's something non-physical, that doesn't mean that all of the myths and rituals of your religion are actually true and effective. Don't be stupid. Stop being stupid.
Now, if any of this had any impact on you,
If you wanted it to have an impact, you should have made a good argument.
I would suggest that you try reading the first 4 chapters in the New Testament of the Bible, called the Gospel.
You see, that's kind of what I meant. When it comes to debates about the nature of consciousness, even if somebody gives in and decides that they agree with you, that goes basically no way to establishing the truth of the Christian Gospels. It doesn't even get you to therefore God.
These are chapters Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Read those.
Why? In what way would that contribute to the philosophical debate you've started? There's literally no connection here.
Try going to a church sermon. Make sure it's a church that actually preaches the Bible.
Again, why? Hey, the identity of consciousness in the human brain is hard to precisely pin down, huh? Anyway, read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John and go to a church and make sure it's one that preaches the Bible. What? Whiplash. Jesus.
Thank you for listening.
You're welcome. And thank you to my audience for listening, too. If you would be so kind, before you go, please do give the video a like and click subscribe if you haven't. And if you really like the channel, maybe consider supporting. A couple of bucks per video or per month is enormously helpful, and enormous thanks to everyone who's already made that choice. For early access, sign up to the email list, list.logicked.com, and I'll see you next time.